Are you fed up with rail strikes?
Well, not as fed up as the rail workers are. They're the ones who are most fed up. They don't want to go on strike. You lose a day's pay. Look, people only go on strike as a last resort. You don't do it on a whim, partly because you lose pay yourself. The government and the train operating companies, but the government, frankly, I think it's fair to say are pulling the strings behind a lot of what's happening here. That's certainly the suspicion of the unions. 4%, are they having a laugh? They are taking the mick. That's way below, that's less than half the rate of inflation. So in practice, they're being offered a huge real terms pay cut. Without just basically telling the workers to go on strike, I don't know how more provocative the train operating companies could be. They're giving them a lower offer than other rail workers have secured. It's worth noting that the RMT, who are now taking part along with ASLEF, so ASLEF for the train drivers union, RMT normally represent rail workers in other sections of the railways, not the train drivers mostly. They're joining this action, but the RMT actually settled with Network Rail because they managed to get a reasonable offer. Obviously, no one wants this kind of inconvenience. Look, I mean, people who work on the railways are football fans or Eurovision fans and all the rest of it, but they've been forced into a position because they've had real terms pay cuts year after year. And a lot of people watching think, well, I've had to suffer that. Well, yeah, that's because in this country, unions have been so weakened that bosses think that they can just get away with paying their workers a pittance. It's ridiculous.
You're saying that it's the government pulling the strings. However, Rail Delivery Group, who is negotiating this pay, they say that more strike action is totally unnecessary, will only help put more pressure on an industry facing an acute financial crisis. Targeting both the Eurovision and FA Cup final is disappointing. Do you think that spokesperson has a point? Do you think rail workers lose sympathy in all of this?
I think, to be honest, the sense you get when you speak to people in a country where most people aren't members of unions anymore, which I think is very sad. Join a union if you're not in a union, everyone. But I think a lot of people think to themselves, fair play, someone's actually standing up and fighting back. Because what's happened over the last few years is people have seen, in real terms, their pay has shrunk. One study found recently that by 2026, the average British worker will be worse off than they were in 2008 on average. That is an unprecedented squeeze in wages. In fact, do you know how far you have to go back to witness such a long fall in real terms in wages? The Battle of Waterloo. That was quite a while ago. That was before any of us were around or anyone watching. But, I mean, a lot of people watching this, not all of you, but a lot of people watching are putting their feet up now for the weekend. Why do they have the weekend? Because the unions went out and fought for that. The weekend is one of the great gains, won because people fought back. These things weren't won by workers writing polite letters and sitting around singing Kumbaya. They were won because, I'm afraid to say, inconvenience was caused, and that inconvenience is why people at the top had to buckle and give something a concession.